Welcome back. Let's talk about business and this time manufacturing. Now, Nigerian manufacturers have lamented the rising economic crisis, which has led to 767 industries shutting down operations, while 335 became distressed in 2023 now. According to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the halting of business operations by the affected companies comes against the backdrop of exchange rate volatility, rising inflation, and other economic challenges that have worsened the investment climate. MAN also expressed dissatisfaction over the expatriate employment levy, a financial contribution imposed by the federal government on employers who hire foreign workers, saying it would amount to a duplication and a burdensome addition. Director of MAN, DEJI360 now says while the levy is ostensibly primed to promote local employment, improve forex and non-oil income earnings, it will regrettably deter foreign direct investments now, disincentivize domestic investors who have partnership with foreign investors, and undermine knowledge transfers that are critical for Nigeria's economic growth. According to him, the prospect of recovery relies heavily on implementing policy stimuli and a synthesis of domestic growth through export focus and offensive trade strategies. The MAN DG added that the results of the emerging upward surge in global oil prices, domestic oil and gas production, local refining of petroleum products, and projected gains of exchange rate unification would promote stability in the FX market and impact manufacturing positively from the second half of the year. Well, joining me to discuss the issues that manufacturers in Nigeria are facing in the country is DEJI360, who is the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. He joins us from South Africa. Thank you very much for coming on the program. From what we have read, of course, manufacturing at this time in the country is very, very challenging. And from some of the local manufacturers we have spoken to, it's like, manufacturing is taking place in this country with tears.
Yes, I think, well, thank you for having me on your program. And I think your opening is quite apt, especially at this time that the economy itself is experiencing a lot of challenges. Some of them are historical, some of them have come upon us due to some recent developments. And so manufacturers have truly been part of a major part of the sector that has come under the full weight of the challenges. Those manufacturers you spoke with must be those ones who are experiencing issues that has to do with the general macroeconomic environment, the high costs of foreign currency, the issue of infrastructure, as well as lack of patronage. So there are quite a number of challenges that have continued to bedevil the sector. So it will depend on who you are speaking with and what is most concerning to such a manufacturer.
Now, recently you put out a statement, that's the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria put out a statement that in the last 1 year, in 2023 alone, about 767 manufacturing companies actually shut down operations in this country, and that about 335 experienced distress just in 2023 alone. Could you expatiate more on that?
Yes, the manufacturing sector is one that responds very quickly to whatever is happening in the macroeconomic environment and shocks, both external, that's those from outside of the country, and internal, those that have happened in the domestic economy. You will recall that just before this administration came in, we experienced very serious issues about currency transition. We also witnessed the escalation in cost of inputs, including diesel, and also massive low shedding or in electricity and even collapse of the national grid. So all these factors combined to impact on manufacturing business. And so we suffered a heavy blow. Those industries that had to close shop, some of them just couldn't establish any link between input and output. There was no way they will continue to produce and make profit. And in that case, it is just best for you to shut down and probably wait for a more clement environment for you to be able to operate. And those ones that are distressed are also looking forward to the emergence of a situation that is conducive for them to regain full production. In all of this, you discover that even those who are alive have had to restrain their capacity utilization to something between 50 to 55%, while retaining the same number of staff and spending the same amount on utilities. So you can see that the sector, whichever way you look at it, have actually come under a lot of stress. And just looking forward to a change in the environment that will make it conducive for manufacturing business.
Now, so some of the problems you highlighted are still very much existent. Diesel, the cost of diesel is still very high. In some places, it's as high as 2,000 naira per liter, and nothing less than 1,007 or so. And then the problem of forex is still there. The problem of power is still there. Load shedding is still very much a problem here. In some places, it's not even load shedding. You just don't have the power at all. And I'm just wondering, these your members who are still in operation, how are they managing? And let's not also forget that demand for their products too has actually dropped.
Well, it's a very difficult situation for manufacturers. And that's why we have earnestly sought, and we are also happy that we are able to engage the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and working with the relevant ministers, particularly the Minister for Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, on how all these issues can be addressed. You will recall that we have engaged intensely with government, more or less trying to say that we need to have a conversation as to whether it is going to be profitable to continue to manufacture in the country. Because we have to fully appreciate the fact that the manufacturing sector is one of the key sectors that can actually help to assuage most of the challenges that we have. Even the issue of forex. If we are competitive and we are able to produce, we'll be able to export and earn forex. We'll also be able to help the issue of jobs, because we have the highest capacity to generate jobs. We'll also be able to contribute to industrial activities that will reflate the economy. I mean, although this issue of insecurity, I mean, experts have indicated that it can be put down to the issue of people not having jobs.
That's true.
And people not having a way to maintain the normal thing you would expect of a citizen. So it is actually important for government to focus on this, and we have been actively engaging government. We are hopeful that with the new partnership that we are establishing with government, we'll be able to address these binding constraints, because quite a number of them are actually low-hanging fruits that we can work together with government to be able to address. And nevertheless, I mean, we know that there's actually a global downturn in economic activities.
Yeah.
And so every government has to take a decision as to what to intentionally prioritize and then deal with, so that we'll be able to have a respite. I mean, this is not rocket science. We have seen countries in similar situations that have been able to pull themselves out of the crisis. So we are looking forward to working with government to be able to achieve this.
Now, let's speak to specifics now. If you were speaking to the government, what would you say are the most pressing challenges of local manufacturers that you would want at least address? There's just no way all of the problems can be addressed, but what are those pressing ones that you urgently need the government to tackle so that you can have some kind of respite?
Okay, so I mean, if there is a dire situation, what you should ensure is that you don't continue to put yourself into more trouble. So what one would say is that there should just be a freeze on all those anti-industry measures that are being taken. And it's on this note that we want to commend government for putting on hold the implementation of the expatriate employment levy that has actually sent shockwaves around industry. There is actually no need for such a thing. And I think in future, we should engage properly so that the private sector and those concerned stakeholders will be taken on board when decisions such as this are going to be taken. So talking more specifically, I think that there are issues that we can immediately touch upon, which many people like to call the low-hanging fruits. It is inconceivable that you are going to import your raw materials, your machines, and your spare parts for production at the duty rate that we are applying now. There is need for a freeze on the rate of assessing the import duty for production inputs. I think that one we need to do yesterday. And this is to allow, one, for manufacturers to be able to improve on their capacity utilization. It's going to help to bring down the cost of their products. And it is going to allow for a reflation of the process. That's the first thing. The second thing is that because of the inadequacy of power, many manufacturers have resorted to the use of gas. We have one of the highest prices of gas in the world. That has to stop. And the rate at which it is calculated is at the prevailing high rate of exchange. That also has to stop. Government has to intentionally address these challenges for the production of goods in Nigeria. That is very, very important. We also need to address the issue of insecurity. Many of our industries that source their raw materials locally are unable to do so because of the security situation in the country. Additionally, we have to address the issue of access to forex itself. Also, the interest rate. Now, it is ironic that the CBN has to continue to raise the rates. But understandable, the economic factors have to kick in when you are considering inflation, interest rate, and forex. But you have to ring fence the production activity that goes on in the country. So you should be able to isolate those that can assist to reflate the economy and ensure that they have the right access to credit. You have to, at a rate that will allow production activities to assist in reflating the economy, like I've said. We also have to ensure that we have a framework that allows you to be able to disaggregate the priority that you give to foreign exchange allocation. There's the issue of power. The eligible customer scheme that will have been able to allow manufacturers to take power directly from TCN and then be able to resolve, at least to some extent, the issue of inadequacy of power also has to kick in. There are also quite a number of other issues that we will need to sit down with government to give an orientation to the economy that prioritizes industrialization. I have said severally that industrialization is not just a business endeavor. It is a strategic choice that a nation must take, and then have an industrial policy that interfaces with every other aspect of the economy. and then ensures that everything that happens in government conduces to a favorable environment for industry.
Just before I let you go, with all these problems you have highlighted, I'm just wondering how our local manufacturers will be able to compete effectively under the Africa Continental Free Trade area. I'm just wondering, that's the after. How would you be able to compete effectively if you still have these challenges?
Well, I think if you ask me personally, we are very lucky that most other African countries are also struggling. If it were not so, Nigeria would have been a net loser. However, they are also actively improving their economy in such a way that they are able to take advantage of the 1.4 billion people's market. This should have been what Nigeria will effectively and very easily take advantage of. You and I know that Nigeria, more than any other nation in this continent, has been instrumental to the independence of some countries. We have been able to help them in times of crisis and of wars and of devastations. We will have been able to leverage on this goodwill that we have to improve on our economy and be able to get market access to this country. But because of these binding constraints, which you have rightly alluded to, we have not been able to do so. So I think we need to allow the structures that we have set in, for instance, the Action Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and the National Office for Trade Negotiation. We need to be able, for these two institutions, to be able to work with manufacturers, for instance, so that we'll be able to have market surveillance, we'll be able to address the domestic challenges that we have, that will prepare us for specific market penetration in the, not only in the West Africa, but in the continental market. I mean, here in South Africa, we have engaged with so many of our counterparts. I mean, yesterday I spoke extensively with my counterpart in the manufacturing circle in Cape Town, and we were all looking at how we could establish cross-border value chains. There are so many areas that they have advanced in South Africa, and there are so many other areas that Nigerians have performed relatively better. So there is need for us to reach out and for these two structures to be able to do the necessary surveillance, the necessary exchanges, and the necessary collaboration with domestic stakeholders like manufacturers, so that we are able to leverage on this very huge opportunity, so that we don't unwittingly set up a 1.4 billion people's market for Asia, America, and Europe to just come and take advantage of. I believe that we stand a better chance to benefit from this environment, but we need, like you said, to resolve these binding constraints. And the current engagement that the Tinubu's administration is having with the private sector should be intensified in such a way that we are able to have an open, frank engagement that we allow the intentional removal of those binding constraints that have been with us for just too long. And I think we have had too much conversations. We just need to move forward and act so that Nigeria can fully actualize its potential.
So Segun Ajayi-Kadri, the Director General and CEO of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thanks for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much. Right, that's how much you can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.